me, in the old days, back in the old days, Cheri, right? In the old days, we'll do things by hand. We'll write it down, or we'll copy and open a document and paste it in there and stuff, right? You remember those old days when we used to do stuff like that? Well, nowadays, with the technology that we have and with Pinterest, everything is in the cloud now. So now when we talk about saving and keeping things, it's in the cloud. So now Pinterest has become our notepad in the cloud, because most people don't realize that you can save images, videos, and articles on Pinterest.
Articles?
So it's not just
articles too? How? Okay.
Yes. So articles, any articles that you find somewhere, you can save it and so on Pinterest. Now, here's 2 ways that I'm going to suggest that you use Pinterest. And I have a secret way of using Pinterest, and that's also in the coaching program. But I'm going to give you the 2 of the 5 that I share. Right?
Okay, awesome.
So
thank you.
The first one, I love using secret boards because that's a way for me to collaborate with clients. So let's say, for instance, you and I were going to be doing a speaking engagement, okay? Mm-hmm. So now what we'll do is, you know what, we need to set up the website. So here's the color scheme and everything that we want to work with. So instead of you going into Google Doc and creating a document and then putting the links in there and all that stuff, all you have to do is create a secret board and call it Cheri and Maggie's event. And then we start collaborating together and putting things that we found that we're working on. So
brilliant idea.
So you can use secret boards for your staff meetings, where you have your staff coming in and create it as a group board, and have your staff coming in and creating things and storing things and stuff that you guys can go and collaborate on. So those are 2 best ways of using the secret boards. And why you should have secret boards, because there's going to be times you run into things that that you don't want to make public. Mm-hmm. So instead of creating all these things and housing them on your computer, God forbid you go travel somewhere, and all of a sudden you have no access to that information because it's stored locally on your computer. Mm-hmm. But if you are technically savvy, then at this point you can do PC anywhere and get into your PC. But most of us don't do that.
I'll tell you what, that's definitely thinking outside the box with that collaboration and using Pinterest, because that's probably where you're gathering a lot of the information for an upcoming workshop. If you're gathering images for a PowerPoint or et cetera, and as I say, gathering some information, maybe you've got some blogs that you're bringing in with more detailed information and putting them in one area, and you're sharing those secret boards. I love that idea tremendously.
Oh, no. From an aviation guy sitting over here, this is all amazing. And I'm going, okay, how can I bring this in the aviation industry and start looking at some of that type of stuff? So, that's a really interesting information, because aviation's all about how sexy is your airplane.
So cool.
There is a company that is owned. It's the first woman-owned private fleet that uses Pinterest really well.
You have to start following that. So
yes.
It's a woman's fleet. That's cool. Well, now you shared the one tip. What would be the other out of those 5 that you would want to share with our audience today?
Oh, I did. The first one we talk about using it as a notepad, and then the second one is using it as a collab.
Okay, great. I have both of those written down. I wanted to make sure that those were the 2. So to me, they're just, those are so insightful. And again, another way to really think outside the box. Now, with all this information and hearing your passion, how did you were you involved with social media when you first were introduced to Pinterest, or what made you jump on board, Maggie, and really take it to the level that you're at now and really teaching this site to so many individuals where they're actually now able to use it to grow their business?
Well, actually, my previous life started as a computer programmer, so I understand technology really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm going to date myself now.
I
don't know if...
My first class was DOS. Okay, so I just dated me, right?
Okay, all right. So you and I are on the same page here because yes. So you do remember about COBOL and
Oh,
Pascal
yes.
and Fortran and so on, and yeah. So anyways, that was what my forte was. I was working on Y2K, and you all know that Y2K didn't happen. So at this point, I had to do something different. And I've always been interested in marketing, so I went and got my marketing degree. So I've been doing marketing and combining technology with marketing. But when I've always been involved in online, so I was very aware at a very young age about 9X and the bulletin boards and so on. So what got me so much into Pinterest was when I was at the conference and Ben was introduced to me, and I realized that Pinterest was a caboodle on a steroid. So that's what got me into Pinterest.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that because people ask me how I got involved in social media. I was actually at the time regional director here for BNI, Business Networking International, teaching networking. And when I first saw LinkedIn, especially, I thought, oh my gosh, this is networking on steroids. So I completely understand that concept of what you just said about going from caboodle to Pinterest. I never even thought about it because I vaguely remember caboodle, but I didn't really ever tap into it. So Pinterest has always amazed me with the type of information that is shared and how you can use it. And what really is amazing to me, and so many that ask me questions about Pinterest, is, and you kind of answered one of the questions that it's for any business except for the industry that, of course, Pinterest does not allow on, which is a good thing to know that you're not going to run into that type of information. But is there a specific type of business that has a better result, that you found have had better results than others? In other words, a service-based versus a product-based business?
No, there isn't actually. It's all about, Pinterest is about one thing and one thing only, traffic. And that's what they specialize in traffic, just like with Google and the search engine and so on. So that's what they specialize in. Mm-hmm. So outside of those two industries that I mentioned, there isn't a industry that's better than the other one.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know, because I do know that, again, it's one of those sites that it has that myth, as we kind of talked a little bit about when we first started our conversation today, was so many individuals. Well, first of all, I know that there are more women on Pinterest than men, and that's your greater audience. So you definitely want to make sure that it's one of those platforms that it's not just targeting your target market. You're using it as a traffic generator to lead them to where they can get to know more about you, and also drive traffic to where they can purchase from you. So you really have to think differently. I can see that on Pinterest than you do, say, on Facebook or LinkedIn.
It's interesting to listen to you just describe that, because what came to mind was this is like the top of a funnel. So it's beginning to circle at the top, and it slowly works its way down on that.
And we did have a question that just came in wanting to know exactly how do you use Pinterest to sell? What's the best way?
It starts with your imagery. And that is why it is so important that your image create a disruption in the market. Mm-hmm. Once you understand that concept, then the next step is your keywords. Your keywords are what's going to be important, because you want to make sure that you use the IV that goes directly to the search engines such as Google, Bing, and Yahoo. Mm-hmm. And that's why that I cannot stress enough how you must understand how imagery affect the brain, how imagery affect your buying decisions. And that's the reason why I created this mini course about adding glam to your image. So when you have these components together, then you're going to get the traffic. But having traffic is one. But what do you do with that traffic when it comes in? That's the other part that most marketers are missing about conversion. So selling on Pinterest requires just two things. You must have a great image that's going to create a disruption, and you must have a great description. What I always suggest in my course with all my students that have been doing really well is not to go over 240 characters when you're describing the images. And also make sure that on your website your images are optimized. So this is something that you guys do very well when you talk about marketing, Cheri, and on optimizing your images, making sure that everything is optimized and ready to go.
And it's necessary then to optimize each image as well as your pin boards when you're creating the pin board, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Could you briefly describe the difference again for our audience that may not, that kind of maybe they're at that basic level? What is a pin board, and then where the images, how do the images play in those boards?
Okay, a board is really a way to categorize, organize. So think of your board like a fridge, right? So at your home, you have a fridge. Well, I'm assuming everyone has a full fridge, not just a small one. So you have a full fridge, and in that fridge, you have a section for produce, you have a section for meat, and you have a section for drinks and so on and all that, right? So you have your crispers bins, right? So that is a way for you to organize your food. So you don't just dump everything in the fridge. You organize them into sections. So your produce is going to go into the crisper. The dairy stuff is going to go into the dairy section and so on. So that's the easiest way to understand what boards are. It's a way for you to categorize and organize the information that you're curating.
Oh, that's
all it is.
That's a very visual description. Now, if I could just get my husband to understand what the crisper drawers are for and what the meat drawers are for. I love that visual. I understand it completely, but I'm a woman, so that was good,
God.
Maggie. And it's very clear to me because I know when I do just an overview of social media, a lot of times, I kind of break down the different top platforms that our businesses are using, and I talk about Pinterest, and I don't ever declare myself as a Pinterest expert, but I can help them set it up. But I definitely tell them these are the influencers in this industry that you need to be following, and your name is always right there because, again, I want everyone, and that's why I love our So Social Radio show, to definitely hear from influencers, thought leaders, and experts that are tapping into these sites and using them yourself. So, again, when you said that you got onto Pinterest, you kind of, melded the technology with the marketing, and you saw the involvement, and it's continually growing. How are you using Pinterest right now for yourself to grow your upcoming workshops and your business? Just, kind of a tip or something.
I'm using Pinterest in several ways. I'm using Pinterest. Not only do I teach about Pinterest, but I also teach about content discovery and business mastery. And I train social media managers. So the social media manager and event is coming directly from Pinterest for me, and it's generating close to 60% of my leads for what I'm doing. Now that I'm getting ready to launch the Pinterest coaching program, I'm going to be utilizing the ads feature on Pinterest to really branch it out. There are several ways to use Pinterest. Like I said before, the sky is the limit with Pinterest. So these are the ways that I'm using Pinterest currently. Outside of the coaching program that's coming up in the spring and getting my leads, Pinterest is the number one traffic generator for me. Then the second one is the